In the evening, the man spent time in one of the clubs. An employee approached him and said that the evening games would begin soon and invited him to participate in them. The Viscount replied that he would not do it again. The man's name was William Bradshaw. He was the heir to the Viscount. The current Viscount Bradshaw was quite famous in the circles of the aristocracy. The club employee told the man that he was invited. William drank a little from his glass and asked what kind of event was being held, if there was a separate list of invited people. The employee replied that there were always games and drinks available for their club members. William Bradshaw became interested in the offer. The employee said that in addition to games, they shared the hottest news and promotions of the week, and also promised the man that he would be able to have a good time. The man agreed to the club employee's offer and suggested that he could hit the jackpot today. Other visitors to the establishment watched them and discussed that William would lose everything again. After the death of his wife, William Bradshaw became interested in gambling and lost the entire fortune of the Bradshaw family. The man did not have a single piece of land left because of his hobby, and therefore he even had to mortgage the family coat of arms. The only thing he had left was his daughter named Dorene Bradshaw. She was the most beautiful girl on the continent. It was the age of capital, and when stock and futures prices skyrocketed. It was a time when the entire state went crazy with bonds and real estate. You could buy title, power, and honor with money. It was even possible to buy the most beautiful girl in Vinosh. The first beauty of the continent could not but be valuable to her father, who was mired in a heap of debts. William told the girl that she should try hard. The father loved his daughter, but this did not stop him from putting her up for auction, at which a variety of participants offered huge sums of money for the girl. 50,000 gold pieces were offered by the king of a famous island nation. This money, paid for the pretty face of William's daughter, was of great importance to him. The man took the girl by the chin with his hand and asked her to raise her face so that those who wanted to buy the girl would be convinced of her beauty. But her misfortunes did not end there. Those present at the auction assumed that if the girl managed to escape, it would not be a problem, because before this happened, she would simply be locked up. The woman in the green dress looked at her watch and saw that it was already 4 o'clock in the afternoon. She was worried because Lady Dorene was never late for class. She noticed that the maids were already impatient to leave and did not understand what was happening. The woman thought that the girl was late because today was a math lesson, which she didn't like. Dorene was never late or refused to do her homework, but she was often bored in class. For her age, the girl was an excellent student. For these reasons, for a long time, Helen sincerely wanted to work with the girl until the Bradshaw family had financial problems. Various men to whom the father owed money came to their house and demanded that the money be returned to them. Dorene was still too young to cope with all this. The girl asked the teacher to stop classes when they came to demand money from their family. She was too sensitive. Helen was worried about the girl and did not understand how the Viscount could do this to his kind and gentle daughter. Bradshaw entered. The man was very excited. He said that his daughter was kidnapped. The man said what bandits stole Dorene. He was confused and wanted to know what to do in this situation. Helen looked at the man in surprise and said that if the girl was really kidnapped, then who was standing behind him? William turned around and saw his daughter. Dorene smiled and greeted her father. The girl noticed that today was a good day. The man was very excited and asked what happened. William said he came as soon as he heard the news about his daughter. The girl entered the room and straightened her hair. The girl turned around and told her father that she would talk to him about it after class. He persuaded her to wait and tell him what happened. Dorene refused to answer her father and said that she was late for class, and then slammed the door in his face. Helen was alarmed and asked the girl if she was okay because her father said that the girl had been kidnapped. Dorene replied that she was fine. The girl supposed that the suitors must have been very excited by the news that she had run away. Young and shy, smart and polite, she never opposed the will of her parent. Because of her beauty, they are going to sell this poor girl to a complete stranger. In the presence of her mentor, Dorene did not behave as usual. She was arrogant, but still elegant and polite, but more confident and decisive. She had never been like this before. Surprisingly, it suited her, as if she were wearing clothes that didn't fit her before. Dorene straightened her hair and told Helen that she now knew for sure that her father was not capable of solving the current situation. The teacher noticed that something was falling from the girl's head and told her about it. Dorene replied with a grin that it was the straw that was in the bag, and Helen said that it was not funny. William Bradshaw knew that his daughter was going to be kidnapped, but he still let the girl go outside. The girl told Helen that her father should move on with his life, so that what doesn't happen to his daughter. Dorene thought that it sounded too cruel and sad for a 15-year-old miss, and perhaps it would have been easier if she had said it without holding back her tears. She said that her father could live his own life and should not wait for his fate to decide itself. Helen asked the girl how she was able to return alone if she really was kidnapped. The woman did not understand how Dorene was able to return alone without a single scratch and asked the girl about it. Dorene looked into the cup of tea that was standing on her table and asked Helen to ask her a counter-question. The girl asked why the tea suddenly began to taste bitter. The teacher looked in surprise at the girl, who began to drink tea, and asked Dorene to explain what she meant. The girl replied that she sold something more valuable than her body. Dorene said that Helen had been kind to the girl all this time, and that's why she wanted to advise her on something. The girl explained that if a woman had shares in the Way-in Railway Company, then she should not have sold them, because soon their value would skyrocket. Dorene's room was filled with warm sunlight and the scent of lavender. She woke up under a duvet that cost 2,000 gold. She felt as if she was still dreaming. The girl took off her clothes and went to take a bath. She looked at the purple trail left behind by expensive bath products and realized that every time she looked at it, she became happier knowing that she could afford it. Dorene enjoyed a warm bath early in the morning and reflected on the fact that money was the key to happiness. 5 years ago, she turned everything around in an instant and earned 1 million gold in a year after facing a crisis due to her father's lavish lifestyle. Now, in terms of income, she was not inferior even to the counts. Dorene earned all this money instead of her father. However, the girl knew that at any moment she could return to those days when she drank bitter tea and trembled with fear, considering suitors as a means to improve her life because they chose her, not she. A maid named Anna entered the girl's room and said that there was half an hour left. Dorene realized that the stock market opened at 9 and invited the maid to begin. The girl stopped bathing and began to clean herself up. The maid helped her dress and comb her hair. Dorene donned a chic, fitted green dress with a dark top and accessorized herself with jewels to look the part. She settled down in her office and began studying securities. The girl noticed that there would be no movement in the Marsala salon for some time. The girl told Anna to leave the contract for 20,000 shares if nothing changes on 3 positions. Dorene also explained to the maid that today she was planning to conduct a transaction in the heavy industry and therefore asked Anna to only accept requests from that area. It was already exactly 9 o'clock on the clock, and the girls realized that from that minute, stock trading began. The maid took the magic stone in her hands and got ready. At the same time, trading began on the stock market, and people rushed to buy and sell securities. There was noise and confusion all around, as everyone wanted to have time to do what they had planned. Among the entire audience, there was a man in whose hands was a magic stone. He was very worried and tried to shout to Miss Anna through this stone. The magic stone could be used as equipment or an energy resource, depending on the method and degree of processing. The maid heard a voice come from the stone and informed Lady Dorene that the bidding had begun. With the help of a couple of such stones, it was possible to communicate. These were mysterious, glowing stones with magical powers. The mana stone was previously used only as a source of light. Unlocking the potential of this stone helped Vinash make a leap in technological development. The era of endless development has arrived. It was a world in which anyone could become rich through investment. Dorene Bradshaw, whom everyone considered kind and gentle, became a shining representative of this generation. She became a real genius of financial games. 5 years later, the girl achieved great success in stock trading. She carefully studied all positions and made profitable trades. Anna monitored changes in the price of Welsh steel and constantly reported any changes to the girl. When the price of Welsh steel was estimated at 35.2, Dorene ordered 20,000 shares of that position to be sold and intended to sell the remaining shares before the end of the day. Even after the girl paid off all her debts to Bradshaw, she could not leave her family. This was due to her age. Men in Vinash came of age at 18 and girls at 23, so it was difficult for Dorene to become independent before entering adulthood. The average age for marriage for women was earlier than for men, namely at 18 years old. On the contrary, for men this age was 22 years old. Men acquired status and privileges from birth, and women only if they were lucky enough to marry a successful man. Was it possible to call a woman happy, who was considered a thing? Dorene really didn't like this situation. The girl hit the table with her fist and firmly decided that in 3 years, she would definitely leave this place. Anna told the lady that a visitor had come to see her. Dorene did not expect anyone at such a time and assumed that it was that pathetic Count again. The maid confirmed the girl's guesses, and Dorene was very unhappy with this. Earl Adams was not a man who could be called attractive. He communicated closely with the president of the bank and the royal family, so, unlike others, it was difficult for him to go bankrupt. The girl recalled with disgust how her father once tried to marry Dorene to this man. The maid asked if Count Adams was a bad match for the girl. Dorene answered negatively and noted that the problem was not even in the man's appearance. This earl had an evil daughter named Marilyn Adams. Dorene believed that if she entered the Count's family, the girl would definitely try to poison her. The girl told Anna to invite the Count. It was surprising to Dorene that a man, more educated than a woman, did not have enough manners not to show up in someone else's house so unceremoniously. Dorene Bradshaw believed that she had to make sure that he did not dare even think about returning here again. The girl came out to the man who was drinking tea in her living room at the time and assumed that he had come to her today to propose to the girl again. Count Adams approached Dorene and invited the girl to agree to his proposal, since she already knew about it. The girl grinned and replied that she did not share his opinion. The man recalled his words that he had told her earlier, that a woman cannot be called complete until she has a partner next to her with whom she will spend the rest of her days. Dorene looked at Earl Adams and suggested that she would indeed need a companion soon. The man with an important look thought that the girl had begun to think correctly, because the time had already come to give up. He was a loyal servant of the royal family and a friend of the bank president and wanted her to accept him. Then the girl grinned and explained to the Count that she wanted to see a younger man next to her. Count Adams became angry and told the girl that she was not polite. He asked if the girl knew about your bad reputation in society. The man began to explain to her that in order to be loved, a woman must be kind and flexible. He said that he only instructed Lady Dorene out of wisdom. He admitted that he hoped that Dorene would come to her senses and behave accordingly, otherwise she would have to sell all her luxury goods, but because of her stupidity, she did not understand his hints. The girl assumed that, based on his words, wisdom was acquired with experience and asked whether a wise husband expected a happy wife next to him. The Count replied that this was what he meant. Lady Dorene clapped her hands and said that now she understands everything, and therefore the best option for her would be marriage to Earl Howard. The girl explained that Earl Howard was quite old and even had gray hair, and therefore was an ideal worthy and wise groom. The man said that just because Earl Howard was old didn't mean he was a good fit. Dorene suggested that even if Earl Adams was young, that meant he might be worthy. The Count became even more angry and called the girl a fool because she could not understand what he was driving at. The girl looked worried and asked the man for forgiveness and then said that she did not want to anger him. Lady Dorene admitted to the Count that she did not understand why he wanted to marry her so much if she was so stupid and inexperienced. The man, in a fit of anger, sharply grabbed the girl's hand and declared that if he taught her, she would be able to understand everything. Dorene reproached the Count for not being able to convince her with words and for trying to use force. However, she did not think that a man with the title of Count would want to harm the girl. Count Adams began to make excuses and say that he just wanted to set the girl on the right path and considered this to be caring for her. The man accused Dorene of using excessively rude language and said that today he would simply leave, but next time he did not intend to forgive such disrespect. After the Count left, the girl sat down on the sofa and began to think about how long she would have to endure the ego and mentally called the man a pig. The girl imagined herself among riches and thought that if she had been born a man, she would have succeeded in business a long time ago. She believed that being a man, she would not have to endure the vile advances of Earl Adams. Dorene reasoned that if he had not been close to Westwood, she would have driven him away and thought that he was a Westwood dog. 10 years ago, the Westwood family provided a large loan to the royal couple, who were on the verge of bankruptcy. They gained even greater wealth and power with the support of the king. Theodore Westwood, who was the president of the bank, was given the title of Marquess, and the royal family received a large sum of money for several years. The best solution would have been to join such an alliance, but Dorene missed this chance, so she dealt with it alone. This way, she was able to earn more money. Westwood tried to find out who was behind her, but the girl avoided all the traps thanks to her partner named Eric Naiman. This was the king of the underworld who stopped money laundering and began to receive a large percentage of the profits from the shares. When he was still young, his life changed overnight. 5 years ago, he met Dorene in an abandoned building. He then invited the girl to behave quietly and not create problems, and in return promised to let her go in peace. The girl assumed that the guy was asked to kidnap her for 90 gold pieces, and he responded by noting that the girl was quick-witted. Dorene said that he could live on this amount for about 3 months, and then asked what the guy would do after that, and assumed that he would be engaged in miserable affairs for the rest of his life. She promised the guy that she could bring him millions of gold. Eric didn't understand how she could offer such a thing if she herself was sold because of her family's debts. The girl asked the guy what was most important in the taste of black tea. Then she began to explain that it was the temperature, because if the tea began to taste bitter, it means it was overheated. The guy assumed that the girl was mocking him. Dorene suggested changing the subject and asked if he knew that the railroad employees had been on strike for 2 months. Eric confirmed that he knew that the Western Railway, which was not even a year old, had suspended its operations. The girl told him that the Westwood Bank was behind it. The bank made a large bet that the company's shares would fall before the strike began, and when the shares did not fall, the bank provoked a strike by workers who did not take out large loans. After this, Dorene asked the guy if he understood why the taste of the tea had changed. Eric still didn't understand what she meant and why she started talking about tea again. The girl said that in this situation there were no problems either with the stove or with the maid, and only the coal in the stove was replaced with a cheaper one. Dorene explained that since they had no money, they used inexpensive raw materials and could afford coal, which was cheaper than the workers. She asked Eric if he knew where this coal came from. The guy replied that he understood what she was talking about because his younger brother stole and sold fuel and was killed for this. Eric said that coal was transported in the western direction, which was blocked due to the strike. The girl agreed with his words and added that she heard that 2 days ago he left early in the morning or late at night. The guy was very excited and could not believe that the negotiations had failed because the strikers were still there. Dorene explained that this was intentional and the discussion took place behind the scenes. She said that if the railroad company's stock fell, the trains would start running again. The girl began to explain that traffic resumed 2 days ago, which means that the strike will soon be over, and therefore it was worth saving up money and buying these shares now. She advised selling coal and magic stones as soon as possible, because the price raised due to the strike would decrease after a while. Eric asked what benefit the girl would get from this, and she replied that it would be freedom from the obligation to marry all those men and 30% of the girl's profits. Dorene said that this might be the guy's last chance and he should have thought things through. Eric replied that if the girl lied to him, he would find and kill her. Years later, Dorene recalled how much effort she had to make to convince him then. Such thoughts helped motivate the girl. A few moments later, her father came into the girl's room. William Bradshaw was glad to see his beloved daughter. The man stood behind Dorene and tried to pat her on the head, but the girl tried to dodge. The father said that he heard about how Count Adams bothered his daughter and suggested that she punish the count. The girl looked at her father with displeasure and demanded to know the reason for his visit. Dorene thought that if she punished the count, her father would be the first to run to lick his wounds. William said that he was sad, because his own daughter did not believe that he came to see her just like that. Dorene asked him to get to the main point. The father said that Mrs. Marion, whom he met yesterday, is in a deplorable state. The woman approached him personally when they were introduced to each other by the Earl of Arrington. The girl assumed that he wanted to give the woman shares that would increase in value, but she believed that she had nothing to teach those who knew the Earl of Arrington. Dorene uses is in his name, and his father accidentally saw her transaction history. The girl was very angry because of the laws that existed in Vinoche. She really didn't like the fact that the bank provided information for her father. Dorene wanted to know what William had taught Mrs. Marion. The father said that about 3 or 4 days ago, the Marsala salon had a small sale. The man looked at his daughter with hope and assumed that he had given the woman useful information, but the girl disappointed him. saying that she could not tell more because of the woman's talkativeness. The father began to ask the girl to give him more information because he had already promised to tell it to Mrs. Marion. Dorene explained to her father that he should not have used such words. The girl said that even without him, she had a bad relationship with Westwood and could have gotten into trouble. Dorene then told her father to leave because Eric was coming here soon. The man was very surprised and wanted to know the reason for this man's appearance here. William said that he would come to Dorene later, and then he put a stack of money on the table and asked the girl to think about his request when she bought Marina's new collection. After the girl's father left the room, Eric entered her in luxurious attire. The man noticed that William visited Dorene. The girl was angry and told Eric that it was none of his business. Dorene began to question him about why he stopped contacting her and suggested that something had happened to him. The man approached the girl and noticed that she had a different scent of perfume. Dorene asked him to stop acting like a pervert. Eric took a stack of money from the table and replied that 5 years ago the girl was much nicer. Dorene suggested that he put the money back and then continue the conversation. The man became curious where the girl got so much money. He admitted that William wanted the girl to tell him something else. Dorene asked Eric to forget about it and rather focus on working on strengthening his account security. Eric said that if the girl had just joined him, this wouldn't have happened. The girl replied that she would rather trust an idiot than a bandit. The man chuckled and admitted that he had nothing to say in response. Dorene smiled back and said it didn't sound like a bandit's answer. Eric then placed a stack of money on the table and began to touch the girl's hair. He said that he felt sorry for coming today to end his life with the girl. Dorene looked at the man in surprise and then pushed his hand away and demanded to know why he behaved this way. Eric began to blame the girl for disturbing the Marsala salon. The man began asking Dorene how much she had bought. The girl replied that it was time to destroy this junk long ago, and then asked him to tell him why he asked such questions. Eric insisted on telling him how much the girl had. Dorene responded by telling him that her share was 30%. The man was very upset and said that he was really trying to understand the girl. Dorene explained that this company was worth 3 million gold pieces. Eric explained to the girl that he warned her to be careful because Marsala had connections. Now the man demanded to explain to her why she did not listen and stop. Dorene told him that this business could no longer be saved because a business with counterfeit shares could not succeed. The man called the girl an idiot because the owner of Marsala was Judea, who was the king's lover. She was not just a lover, but the mother of his child. Dorene was very disappointed with the situation. She said that it was not surprising that she did not see Judea at any events. Eric explained that no matter how the country treats princes who were born out of wedlock, they are still the sons of the king, and the authorities have already launched a secret investigation to catch Dorene. The girl asked him why he was telling her about this now. She believed that Eric should have warned her in advance because it was his job. The man explained that he could not know what the royal family was hiding because his business was going well. Eric told the girl that her stupid father told everything to Holland Arrington, and from that moment on, it became a problem. Dorene wanted to know how serious it was. The man explained to her that the source of the money laundering had been revealed, and it was also revealed that Westwood had interfered with Bradshaw. Eric thought it was funny that Westwood Bank was now cutting Marsala's stock price. He also said that due to the fact that the girl was tied up in the salon, the king hired the Blue Wing Information Agency, and his mercenaries would look for the girl. The girl began to assume that it was necessary to retreat before it was too late. The man supported her idea and asked how much of the 30% she had managed to sell. Dorene explained that she had only sold 5% and began to discuss whether it was good that there was no reaction in the market. She began to assume that it was necessary to return her 25%, and those that the girl had already managed to sell needed to be quickly restored. Eric suggested that the king would act even after the girl washed her hands and said that His Majesty would find out and ruin everything. The girl said that Eric should take the money she had been earning for 5 years and leave her easily. The man advised Dorene to go to Earl Jones and beg him, because the Earl was an old friend of the Marquis of Westwood. Eric admitted that if the girl promises to marry Jones, he will decide everything. The girl was unhappy with Eric's proposal. The man began to explain that as soon as the investigation begins, all accounts will be frozen, and if the shares are frozen, the girl will become bankrupt. Dorene stated that she transferred her accounts to Alashir's bank in order to be prepared for this. Eric replied that, unfortunately, if the king was hanged, the bank would be powerless against it. The girl angrily said that she would rather throw money away than marry Count Jones. Eric responded by noting that it was good that her father made money from this. Dorene explained to the man that this was not the case, and her father would have told her immediately. The minister carefully examined the securities and stated that this story was difficult to believe because everything was done by a girl and a teenager. The man told William Bradshaw that his daughter was disrupting the stock market and that it was a big problem. William was very worried and afraid of the consequences of what happened. The minister, with a tired look, began to explain that it was already difficult for him to deal with the president of the bank, Alichier, who had returned from Romina after 6 years there. Marquis Theodo sat opposite and explained to the minister that William now needed a solution instead of criticism. Then he grinned and said that the most important thing was the Marsala salon and the Viscount should give the existing share and the borrowed 5%. The men began to discuss among themselves that it would be difficult to distribute all the shares, and perhaps they could help with this. The minister offered to pay 1 million gold pieces, including interest. William Bradshaw expressed his gratitude for what the men were about to do, but he believed that his daughter would not be satisfied. One of the men said that the property belonged to William, not his daughter, and advised the immature girl to find a husband who would guide her on the right path. The man handed the document to William and explained that, fortunately, Earl Jones Adams had already expressed his desire to marry the Viscount's daughter, and all that was needed was a stamp on the marriage contract. Marquis Theodore pointed to the text of the document and said that he had added another clause, which stated that he was giving 100,000 of the promised amount as a security deposit. The man also explained that violating the terms of the contract would cost William 10 million. The Viscount was very excited by this proposal and considered it unimaginable. The Marquis began to reassure William and said that these conditions were only so that the girl could not refuse the engagement and the Viscount would not have to pay for anything. The man then asked His Majesty to confirm these words. The king said that it would still be better than dying, paying for causing problems to his beloved. Dorene held the contract in her hands and read that Bradshaw would have to pay a fine of 1 million gold pieces for terminating the contract. The girl was very upset because they could have finished this case for 400,000, but now they owed 1 million. The father began to ask the girl for forgiveness for this. Dorene started screaming at William. She stated that she wanted to know if he was truly sorry or if he just wanted to marry the girl off. The man was very tense and took out a handkerchief to wipe the beads of sweat on his face. He confirmed in a trembling voice that he was sorry. The daughter demanded to explain how her father could be sorry if he sold her a second time. She clutched the document in her hands and said that the man made it so that she could get away with only compensation. William tried to justify himself and said that the girl misunderstood him because he only thinks about her. Dorene asked her father not to say anything stupid. The girl did not intend to marry Earl Jones and live with his daughter Marilyn. She believed that she would not be able to pay the fine anyway, and therefore would spend the funds as she wanted. Dorene told her father that she would manage the money because she was the one who earned it in order to get the family back on its feet. The girl called the maid and told her to get ready. Dorene intended to leave her father. William was confused and asked his daughter not to leave. Dorene went shopping and was able to purchase a new outfit. She said she expected nothing less from Eloano's head designer, Marina Austin. She thought the new designs were amazing. The girl could afford to buy delicate dresses, shoes, and long earrings, as well as a specially shaped ring, one of a kind, because she had earned enough for it. Minors could not spend money on their own under the Vinoche law. Therefore, the girl had to open an account under someone else's name. Eric had helped her with this before, but now he was useless. Now the girl could only trust herself. Dorene stood in the store and steeled herself to gather her thoughts and decide on a purchase. The seller approached the girl and suggested that she did not like anything offered. Dorene chuckled and replied that all the products were very beautiful. Behind the girl, someone turned to the girl and said that he did not expect to see her here, and then said hello. Dorene turned around to see who it was. Marilyn Adams was in the store. She called the girl Miss Dorene and then suggested that she should call her Mama. The girl smiled and ironically noted that she did not remember when she became the mother of such a terrible daughter, and Marilyn replied that the girl spoke too much for someone who had been sold. Dorene suggested that the girl's father was so pathetic that he needed to buy people. Marilyn Adams became angry and demanded to repeat what the girl just said. Dorene replied that it was time for her to leave, because she was not as free as some. Then the girl grinned and wished the Count's daughter a good time. Marilyn was very angry with the girl and shouted her name several times. Pleased with her behavior, Dorene left the store. She was interested to know who Marilyn was like in character. The girl thought that perhaps she should have paid the fine and fled abroad, but first she needed to find a broker. She didn't understand who she could trust with her wealth. Someone was watching the girl on the street, and at one point Dorene was suddenly grabbed and dragged into a nearby alley. The stranger held the frightened girl tightly from behind. She did not see and could not understand who was trying to kidnap her. Dorene began to think that this was the work of Count Jones, and with such a dirty trick he wanted to force her to marry him. The girl understood that she ran with all her might to fall into this hole again, and in the end the same thing happened as when she was kidnapped the first time. She thought that fear would not change anything, and she had to look for a way out of this situation. The stranger addressed the girl by name, and it seemed to her that she had already heard this voice somewhere and turned around to look at the kidnapper. Dorene's kidnapper was Eric. The girl was very surprised that it was he who attacked her. The man grinned and asked Dorene how her business was going. The girl breathed a sigh of relief and asked the man not to frighten her with such actions anymore. Eric was a little pleased that he had scared the girl. He explained that he grabbed Dorene so as not to attract attention. The girl was outraged by Eric's behavior and said that he would get it now, and hit him in the stomach with her elbow. Eric grabbed his stomach with his hands in pain and began to tell the girl that he had come to help, and she did this to him. Dorene picked up the hat and asked Eric why he wanted to see her. After all, the man had previously said that he would stop communicating with the girl. Eric explained that he could not remain indifferent. The girl told him that if he talks nonsense, she will leave. The man explained to Dorene that if she left now, she would be very sorry. Eric asked the girl if she had heard that the director of the bank, Alicia, had returned after 6 years. Dorene was very surprised by what the man said. Damon No, at 26, was ahead of his brothers, who were the true heirs. He was an illegitimate son who received the title of Duke. Damon made Alicia's bank the first in the country, despite interference from the royal family, the duchy, and Westwood. This man became influential not only in Vinoche, but also in Pomin, and now 6 years later he has returned. The girl suggested that she should have asked Damon about how to flee the country. Eric explained that he personally knew his assistant, who was indebted to him, and the man told him about Dorene. Dorene was angry with the man and accused him of telling all the secrets to someone again. Eric pointed his finger at the girl's forehead and advised her to think carefully with her smart head. The man explained that Alicia had the worst relationship with Westwood and was interested in the girl. The girl asked Eric to stop trying to help her because she was already determined to get married in 2 weeks. Eric did not argue with the girl, but hinted that on that day everything would be different and her wedding with Earl Adams would not take place. Damon, upon arrival, Noe ordered a ball to be held and wanted all the aristocrats to attend. He believed that it would be a grand celebration. An assistant named Elliot reported to Damon that Dorene's wedding was to take place that day, Bradshaw and Jones Adams. The man wanted to know what they should do then. Elliot explained that the Duke's influence was much greater, and therefore the wedding would most likely be cancelled or rescheduled. Damon chuckled and said that they shouldn't be involved in this. He asked Marina, who was in charge of the bride's wedding dress, to slow down a little. The assistant asked the Duke how such a ball could be organized in 2 weeks. Elliot expected Jones Adams to protest against this. Damon held the documents in his hands and replied that he was sorry, but he would have to ignore the Count, and after the assistant gave him important information, he should understand the consequences. Elliot thought that Eric had given him the materials to review so they could make sure of everything. The document stated that the girl earned money and at the same time interfered with Westwood and the royal family. She was a woman with a bright and brilliant instinct. The Duke read that Dorene Bradshaw had excellent intuition and extensive experience and was also at odds with the Westwood Bank. Damon said that he also wanted to buy the Marsala salon, but did not know that Judea was the king's lover. Elliot explained that the Blue Wing Agency covered it up. Damon learned that the girl was facing a fine of $1 million gold. The man also wanted to know what happened to Adam's first wife, and the assistant said she was crazy. 6 years ago, when Damon turned 20, he was appointed head of the No family, although they did not consider him their relative. Everyone wanted to kill him and take the bank. They could not accept the fact that an illegitimate son became the head of the family. Damon lived in anticipation of being poisoned. Then he saw only a hopeless future. Damon, although he was the head of the family, did not understand why he had to attend balls and similar events. One day at a ball, he hid in the garden from the outside world and noticed someone else there. Dorene was sitting on the bench Bradshaw in a beautiful evening dress, which he did not yet know. Damon approached her and thought that the girl was beautiful and looked about 14 years old. The girl stood up to her full height on the bench and was about to bend down. The man could not understand whether she was one of the aristocrats. The man tried to stop the girl and shouted at her that what she was about to do was dangerous. However, the girl could not resist and jumped down. Damon rushed to the stranger and picked her up. He asked the girl how she was feeling and smelled the champagne that came from the girl. The man thought that the girl was drunk. She politely thanked him for his help and said that she was fine. The girl lifted her dress and saw her dirty shoes. She was very excited about this and told the man that she had dirty her shoes. The stranger was worried and began to talk about how much the shoes could cost. Damon reached into his jacket pocket and offered to help the girl if she didn't mind. He took out his handkerchief and handed it to the lady so that she could wipe away the dirt. The girl was pleasantly surprised by the man's act. She thanked him politely and explained that she was now saved from disgrace. In gratitude, the girl gave Damon one wish. Damon didn't know what kind of wish he should come up with and invited the girl to think about this question together. The man began to tell the girl that he was planning to go abroad and the Prince of Romana was interested in their bank. He was perplexed because he was complaining to a drunk girl. He told Dorene that he wanted to run away there and expand the bank so that everything would calm down. The girl interrupted him and suggested that it was just a delay. Dorene explained to him that the larger the bank became, the more violently they would try to kill him. The man was very upset and said that he was destined to die anyway. The girl learned from Damon that his mother was dying in agony only because a commoner gave birth to a son for the Duke. The lady admitted that she also did not have a mother, but asked the man not to tell anyone about this and not to try to find out who the girl was. She advised the man to open a charitable foundation and donate all his property there, because the foundation's property did not belong to the person, and even if he dies, the Duke will not receive anything. Damon assumed that after this he would become bankrupt, but the girl explained to him that he could become the director of this fund and appoint the closest person as his heir. Dorene said that if the man did this, the Duke would not get a penny and would leave Damon alive to join the bank to the family. The man was very inspired and got up from the bench. He noticed that the girl said everything correctly, and although now was not the time, he needed to get to work quickly. He looked at the stranger and thought that he had been thinking about solving this issue for several months, and the girl came up with the perfect idea instantly. Although she was only about 14 years old, the girl asked him whether his advice counted for her desire, which she promised him. The man did not know how to thank her and replied that it was more than enough. Dorene reassured him and explained that she did not need anything and began to leave. The girl meant that she had to live on funds that were earned on her own. The man was very surprised by this answer. Dorene turned around and joyfully declared that she could handle it herself. Damon asked the assistant if Dorene could be Bradshaw as the girl he met many years ago in the garden. Elliot warned him not to set his expectations too high. The man looked at the documents again and said that if the girl was right, then it was necessary to bring her here in any way, because now his bank really needs a genius like her. Dorene Bradshaw learned that there would be a ball and was already thinking about what dress she should wear for the event. Earl Adams was furious after learning that a ball would be held for all the aristocrats on his wedding day. He considered this an insult to his family. The man, using a magic stone, contacted Dorene and found out that she was also going to the ball. The girl asked the Count to postpone the wedding and said that the wedding dress was not ready yet. She offered to tell her the wedding date in a letter. His daughter overheard his conversation at that moment. The man was very angry that Duke Damon dared to disrupt his holiday, and Marilyn found out about this, hiding behind the door. Dorene put down the magic stone and tried to understand why Count Adams needed to yell at her, because it wouldn't change anything anyway. The girl did not like to go to balls, but now was a different case because this was the last chance that the director of the Alashir Bank gave her. She didn't know what Damon was up to, however. This could clearly help buy time for the girl. Now she had to prevent her wedding within 2 weeks. Dorene understood that no one could save her except herself, but nevertheless, she was sure that 2 weeks would be enough for her to do this. 2 weeks later, the day came when the ball began. Many guests gathered in the luxurious palace of the Duke. The girls surrounded Duke Damon and began to praise him for being able to increase their investment thanks to him. Duke Damon was an attractive and handsome director of the Alashir Bank. That is why Marilyn Adams considered him the ideal man. Marilyn understood that her father hated the Duke, but she adored such provocative men. The girl believed that she could not miss such an opportunity and approached the Duke to greet him. The man politely greeted Lady Marilyn in return. The Duke said that he had heard that there were difficulties in the girl's family. Marilyn was surprised and replied that there was a misunderstanding because her future stepmother and father treated each other well. The man was distrustful of the girl's words, but Marilyn Adams explained that Dorene Bradshaw said so herself. At that moment, someone behind them noticed that this was impossible, and Marilyn and the Duke turned around to look at who it was. The guests in the hall looked at the guest who had come to the ball and began to whisper that there were various rumors about this girl, and that she was really very beautiful. Dorene Bradshaw entered the banquet hall and immediately received all the attention. The girl was dressed in a beautiful evening dress and was decorated with various jewelry. Marilyn looked at Earl Adams and his future wife and became jealous that all the guests were looking only at Dorene, but she was sure that the Duke was still paying attention to her. At this moment, Damon stopped listening to Marilyn and, like all the guests, was fascinated by Dorene's beauty. Bradshaw. Earl Adams demanded that the girl understand that she was his wife and property, despite having to postpone the wedding. Dorene was dissatisfied with the Count's statements and told him that she did not belong to anyone but only to herself. The man threatened her with his finger and said that the girl was underage and therefore had no rights. Dorene thought that the Earl was himself underage in comparison to Duke Damon. Earl Adams and Dorene. She turned to the man and said that she had not seen him for a long time. This woman was Judia Millionaire. She was the owner of the Marsala salon, which Dorene tried to bankrupt, and the king's lover. Judia said that she didn't know if the Count's bride would be happy to meet her, because she just makes simple and cheap clothes. Dorene told the woman that she was not polite enough to deal with rude people. Judia was outraged by this answer. The girl said that the clothes the woman made were cheap and simple, and the designs had gone out of fashion 40 years ago. Judia became angry with Dorene Bradshaw, however, continued to say that buying the woman's clothes was a waste of money and her product never received positive reviews. The woman told the girl that she did not dare to say that. Dorene looked at Earl Adams and wondered why he didn't say anything. Judia turned around and began to leave. Dorene realized that the Count was silent because he could not afford to go against the king's beloved. The girl was shocked that she would be his future wife and began to leave the Count. The man tried to stop Dorene and explain his action. Count Adams followed the girl and took her hand. He asked to listen to him and explained that he was not what she thought he was. Dorene told him to stop and let go of her hand. The girl did not want to listen to the Count's excuses and stated that she was hurt, and then demanded to be released. Damon suddenly intervened in their conflict. The man came up and in one motion removed the Count's hand from the girl. After the Earl was thrown back, the Duke inquired from the girl if she was okay and wanted to know if Dorene's wrist was injured. The girl was pleasantly surprised by the Duke's act, and he told her that a lady did not deserve such treatment in this place. Dorene was sure it was Damon, but The man politely invited the girl to steal her for a while. The angry Earl Adams demanded that the Duke and Dorene stop and explain where his bride was being taken. The Count rushed after them, but Damon managed to close the door in front of him. The man began to insist that the Duke explain his action and open the door. Damon grinned back at the Count and politely explained that the man shouldn't have known what they were going to talk about. The Duke himself could not believe that he had just taken someone's bride away like that. Dorene was left alone with the Duke and asked about his well-being. She then thanked him for his help, but noted that it was very sudden. The man still held the door so that the Count could not interfere with them. He turned and looked at the girl, and then asked if Lady Dorene remembered him. The girl was a little confused and couldn't remember how she could know him. Damon reminded her about Lady Mary's ball, which happened 6 years ago. Dorene began to remember how that day she mixed up champagne with juice and got drunk. After drinking alcohol, she could not understand why it was so hot. Lady Dorene apologized to the man and admitted that she was very drunk that day and did not remember what happened then. The Duke was very disappointed with what he heard from her. The man decided to ask the girl about how he could survive if his relatives wanted to kill him for money. The girl said that he meant himself, but the man insisted on answering his question and admitted that it would be best to create a fund, which he did. Dorene replied that this method only worked once. She explained that the law had been amended, and now no one was interested in such organizations. Those days are gone, and now the government will not approve a fund that will be created to protect property. The girl noticed that 6 years ago, this idea was great. She understood that the royals were fools. The Duke asked the girl about who she heard this from, and asked her if the girl had read about the incident in Romina. Dorene was interested in Damon's question and suggested that Romine had the same law regarding charity. The man took the girl's palm with both hands and admitted that he was looking for her. He asked Dorene to work in his bank. The girl asked the Duke to repeat his proposal, and at that moment, Count Adams called the servants for help and asked him to quickly open the door. The Duke decided not to wait for the Count to open the door and headed to another place. The man pulled Dorene along by the hand. Lady Dorene pulled back her hand and explained to Damon, "No, you shouldn't have grabbed the girl like that." The man thought that he should have immediately noticed that this was the girl he met 6 years ago. He saw a real genius in Dorene because, despite the seriousness of the situation, the girl remained calm and elegant. The Duke considered the girl's qualities to be the main qualities of an investor shareholder. He took off his glove and held out his palm to her, and then politely asked for Dorene's hand. The girl smiled and gave her hand. At this time, Earl Adams was still trying to unlock the door and was very angry because he could not do it. The Duke led Lady Dorene through another exit, and they found themselves back in the ballroom. The man was leading the girl by the arm right behind Earl Adams. Jones saw them and rushed towards them. He could not understand how they had ended up behind him and told the Duke that the man could not have taken his bride away. The Count demanded that Damon No paid him $1,000,000 gold. He so wanted to keep Dorene for himself, Bradshaw. The guests at the ball began to whisper and discuss what was happening, and the Count's daughter Marilyn even blushed with excitement. The Duke confirmed Jones's guesses and said that he wanted to get Miss Dorene. The man explained that he fell in love with her at first sight. The girl was very excited and thought that the Duke had gone completely crazy. Damon said that he didn't have 1,000,000 gold pieces on hand, and so he would find them now. Damon No approached Judea and said that although it was already late, he wanted to congratulate Viscountess Judea Millionaire. The woman could not understand the reason that the Duke began to behave this way, because she did not even know him. The Duke asked Judea if she ran the Marsala salon. The woman was a little confused, but confirmed that she was the manager of this enterprise. The man looked at the clock, which showed 1 minute to 6 o'clock in the evening, and began to expect something. A few moments later to Judea, a man approached Millionaire and quietly told her that he had to tell her about something very important. Judea learned something from the man that made her very nervous. She couldn't believe what she just heard. At this point, the Duke congratulated the Viscountess on her bankruptcy. Dorene was a little curious and began to realize that Damon No waited for the stock market to close. Judea tried to find out from the Duke why something suddenly happened with the stock price. The man answered her that great love always came along with misfortune. Damon asked the woman if she thought she was trouble herself. The woman began to demand that he explain the reason for this behavior. The man told her that the Queen was furious. Judea suddenly became silent after that and was very frightened by his words. The Duke explained that she and the King had crossed the line. He told everyone that Judea and the King had put a man in distress and thought that no one would know about it. Dorene looked at the Duke and became more and more convinced that she had initially thought that he was behaving strangely. The girl immediately noticed that he was pretending to enjoy the ball, although he himself was giving orders all the time. She guessed that his escort in a white suit was probably watching everything and selling off shares during the ball. The Duke admitted that Judea thought that the King's love for her was strong enough to overcome the Queen. The woman began to accuse the man of being impudent towards her. Damon said that the King left Judea to pacify Her Majesty's anger. After this, the man admitted that he also ruins other people's lives because of greed. Dorene listened carefully as the man explained to the Viscountess that a person could not simply rely on others, because he had to live on money earned on his own. Some time ago, Duke Damon No knelt in front of a woman in a luxurious dress who was looking out the window and said he was done. This woman was the Queen of Venetia named Ersenia. She replied to the Duke that she had heard and took note of his words. The queen said that she no longer loved her husband, although she had previously thought that his feelings were eternal. But then she realized that these were just the stupid fantasies of Princess Romina. The woman suggested that if the Duke reported information to her, he would like to receive something in return. The Duke politely refused to ask the queen for anything. The queen chuckled and said that Damon was lying to her. She explained that Alexei would have laughed if he had heard such a thing. Yersenya said that the Duke was an old friend of her younger brother Alexei, and therefore she was obliged to listen to his request. The man obediently agreed to voice his request and asked the queen to make the king pay for his action. The woman laughed, but agreed to his wishes and noted that the Duke really hated the king and Westwood. Damon thanked the queen, and she asked him to tell him about Romina. At the ball, Judea was very upset because she found out about her bankruptcy and began to feel bad. The men tried to calm her down and asked about her well-being. Earl Adams could not believe that the king could turn his back on the Marsala salon. The man thought that the Marquis of Westwood had not told him anything about this, although the Count had not been able to contact him for several days. The man fell to his knees and began to reflect on the fact that the Marquis had turned his back on him. James began to assume that Duke Damon No will take his bride away. The Count covered his face with his hands in despair and was very upset. He couldn't believe that this was happening right now. The Duke was pleased that the moment had finally arrived when the scene he had imagined many times to gain the good of one man became a reality. The man turned around, but Lady Dorene was no longer there. She seemed to disappear among the guests. The girl met Eric at the other end of the hall. The man presented important documents and explained that the security of judicial data was much stricter than he thought, and it was very difficult to get it. The friend chuckled and suggested that there were no more obligations now. Dorene asked him not to talk about it because she was not going to forget everything so easily. The girl smiled at Eric and explained that if he wants forgiveness, he will have to work for 3 more years. The man looked at Dorene with a serious look and began to persuade himself not to fall for her sweet face, because then he would stumble again and it would be very bad. Eric said it didn't matter if the girl asked for help if she continued to pay him. Dorene replied that if he ruined his relationship with the royal family, he would be finished. The friend extended his palm to the girl and suggested that it was time for them to say goodbye. Dorene shook his hand and asked him if he'd come for this. The man admitted that he was sorry that the girl was caught. Lady Dorene asked not to attach any importance to this and wanted to know what would happen next. Eric leaned closer to the girl and whispered something in her ear. She was very surprised and noticed that the man was a bad guy. Damon No was confused and thought that his goal was neither Jones nor Marsala, but only Lady Dorene, but she disappeared somewhere. Suddenly, a girl appeared behind him and inquired about the amount earned from the bankruptcy of Judea's salon. The Duke could not figure out how Lady Dorene could sneak up on him like that. The girl repeated her question, and Damon replied that he had earned 1.5 million gold. Dorene asked him to name her share in this, because it was a bait that the Westwood Bank had planted to track her down. The Duke was very surprised by the girl's request, but she explained that if it weren't for her, Damon would not have been able to take possession of such shares, and therefore she had the right to a share. The man replied that by law he should not give her a share. Dorene explained that he had just hired her and she could ask him for a bonus for contributing to a big deal. The Duke said that he did not hire the girl, and she assumed that she would still lose in court, and therefore quit. The man was stunned that Dorene was asking him for a bonus without a legal basis. Lady Dorene asked him to explain what he meant by his words about love. She wanted to know if he was going to take responsibility for his words. Damon No began to calm the girl down and said that he would definitely take responsibility for this. The girl was surprised and wanted him to explain himself. The man turned around and walked towards Earl Adams. He explained to Jones that, thanks to the Marsala situation, he suddenly had 1.5 million gold pieces. The Count was very surprised by what the Duke was telling him now. Damon No thought it was great that he now had such a large amount of money. The Duke offered to pay Jones 1 million gold pieces as agreed. The guests at the ball were very excited as they watched the situation. Count Adams thought that Westwood had already renounced him, and now he could not also refuse the money. The man agreed to the 1 million gold pieces offered by the Duke. Damon No was pleased that the Count agreed. Dorene intervened in their conversation and stated that the Duke should not have paid the 1 million gold pieces. The girl explained that she was wondering what the Duke would do when he said that he would take responsibility for his words. Dorene asked Damon to explain why he wanted to solve her problems. Without waiting for an answer, she said that the Count was the first to terminate the contract. The girl showed Jones the divorce papers between the Count and his wife and asked him if he knew them. Lady Dorene suggested that the Count sent a certain amount every month to a psychiatric clinic. Jones was shocked by what the girl just showed him. She said that at the clinic, she was able to meet his wife, who personally told her that she had never signed the divorce papers. The girl explained that experts had found out that this signature did not belong to the Count's wife, and now, if the divorce is declared invalid, the marriage contract will become irrelevant. Dorene grinned and stated that because such a situation had occurred, the Count must now pay her compensation. Jones was on his knees and extended his hand after the leaving girl. He asked her to stop, but Dorene turned away from him and told him not to forget the 1,000,000 gold pieces she would be waiting for. The Duke looked at Dorene and thought that he was really similar to her, because she wanted to take revenge on him in front of everyone and was able to do it all on her own. The man was delighted with the girl and thought that now he was simply obliged to take her to the Alishir Bank. The girl went out into the courtyard, and the Duke followed her. He said that it would be difficult for Dorene to get her 1,000,000 gold, because it would be easier for Jones to sue her because the court was on the side of the royal family. The Duke believed that even if he paid everything, this amount would belong to her father. Lady Dorene replied that she did not care, because it was ill-gotten money. Damon warned her that she would be able to get the money or not. But still, Westwood was already sharpening his grudge against the girl. Dorene smiled back and hinted at the person who made this happen. The man invited Lady Dorene to come to his bank. He explained that their enterprise was financially stronger than Westwood, and therefore they would be able to protect it. The girl said she didn't understand why he needed her so much, and wanted to know why he thought her skills were worth it. The Duke admitted that he wants to destroy Westwood, and he needs her for this. Lady Dorene explained that the man had another enemy. She covered her mouth with her hand to speak as quietly as possible and named the king. The Duke was surprised and asked her to explain how she knew about the king. The girl said that the fund's investments were undermining the royal family's business, and he should have been more careful about it. Damon was very surprised, because he knew that neither the royal family nor even the bank itself knew about it. The man was stunned that Dorene could only figure this out by looking at the investment history. The girl asked to explain how the man would pay her if she agreed to work for him. She said that she was still a minor and therefore could not open an account. She asked if he would pay her father and explained that she obeyed William because when he died, she would still inherit his property. The girl believed that there was nothing better than confidence in her inheritance, the rights to which were guaranteed. The Duke said that he could give the girl such confidence and wanted to know if Dorene would work for him after that. Lady Dorene was intrigued by this proposal. The man explained to her that he could not leave the girl under the care of such an incompetent person as Viscount Bradshaw. Damon wanted to take away his parental rights from William, and the girl would be free. The Duke said that the girl would become the heir to his foundation, and after his death, the foundation would pass into the hands of Dorene. Sometime later, Lady Dorene was packing up her father's estate. The maid approached her and asked where the girl was going and what the Viscount would say about this. The girl slammed her suitcase and replied that she did not want to know William Bradshaw, because now she had a new father. Dorene invited Anna to go with her and told her that she would be paid more in the new place. At that moment, the girl's father entered the room and became very excited. The man knelt down and began to repeat that he was very guilty before his daughter. The girl asked him who he was. William began to beg Dorene and say that he could not live without her. The man asked to forgive him for the last time and noted that he had raised the girl well. Dorene replied that she became like this because she corrected his mistakes, but now her father will not receive a penny from her. The man became very angry after such statements from his daughter. The Viscount began to reassure himself because he still remained her legal guardian, and no matter where the girl worked, the money would still be his. Before leaving, the girl said that lawyers from the bank would soon arrive and take care of the deprivation of parental rights. William was very excited after the girl's words. Dorene asked him to do what they told him so as not to tire them both, because this was not the first time for the man. The father was very stunned by what the girl was offering and asked her to explain to him what Dorene meant. His daughter reminded him of the day she was kidnapped. The girl told her father that she just wanted to be a good daughter because she was sorry that her father was left alone. She admitted that she wanted to give him the life he dreamed of. Sitting in the sack, Dorene changed her mind and realized that no one in this world would protect her, and also realized that it was impossible to live with such a stupid father and remain a good daughter. William was very alarmed, but the girl admitted that when she realized all this during the abduction, she was not even scared or angry. Dorene admitted that she was glad that she was able to tell him this and asked her father not to live such a life anymore. The girl got into the Duke's car, and he told her that lawyers should already be preparing a lawsuit. The man reassured her, because even if the Viscount's license was taken away, the girl could keep her surname. Damon explained that when they were in court, the lawyers could just file the paperwork or even jail him. Dorene thought that the Duke was good at business and perhaps had precedence. The Duke said that everything had already been prepared so that the girl could stay at the estate, as she had asked. The man asked the girl again if she was sure of this. Dorene confirmed her words and explained that because they were not married, it might seem strange to others. The girl looked very sad and told the man that she trusted him. The Duke was a little surprised and called Lady Dorene funny. The man said that he would make sure that no one knew anything about the girl for the next few days. Damon told her not to worry, because this was his main specialty. For the first 3 years, the girl's guardian will be the Duke's assistant, and he will receive her money. And then the Duke will add up everything that Dorene has earned during this time and send it to her account. Damon asked the girl if she trusted him after he revealed the whole plan. Dorene replied that trust will appear after signing the contract. The man said that he expected Lady Dorene to answer this way and therefore prepared the first version. He handed the girl the documents, and she noticed that it was wonderful that he did not delay. Dorene looked at the documents and could not believe that she would inherit 20 million gold, although the conditions were not so favorable. The girl suggested that people might protest against this. The Duke explained to her that he was the only director and therefore there was no need to worry. The man said that the members of the management were not happy, because if the Duke was gone, Dorene could become a director. Lady Dorene thought that if Duke Damon died, she would become one of the owners of the bank, and if she declared that she wanted to become a director, then no one would object. The girl openly admitted to the Duke that she preferred honesty to interests and did not believe in feelings. She said that she could not trust Damon until he clearly said why he was helping the Viscount's simple daughter. The man explained to her that he was not going to marry and have an heir, and initially his foundation was supposed to start working after his death. The Duke said that he had no one to leave his brainchild to and needed a person who would attract attention. Damon admitted that he was now happy to be with the girl. Dorene looked at him and thought that the Duke was a little strange, because he was very happy when he said that he would give her all his money. After some time, the girl was brought to a rich estate. The assistant showed Lady Dorene her room, which seemed too luxurious to the girl. Elliot showed the girl the bathroom and said that he had prepared a bath for Lady Dorene with marylance petals. The girl was very surprised that expensive flowers were used for her sake. The assistant noticed that the girl often wore shoes and therefore hired a person to massage her feet. Elliot introduced Lady Dorene to the maid who would help the girl. Dorene said such spending was wasteful. The Duke's assistant agreed with her, but said the Duke considered it an investment. The girl thought that the Duke had a good idea to win her over in this way. She was happily ready to take a bath and massage. Elliot read out the daily routine to Lady Dorene. He said that breakfast starts at 7 in the morning, but it will be served when the girl wakes up. It seemed to the Duke's assistant that Lady Dorene was not paying attention. The man asked the girl if she was listening to him now. After the procedures, the girl sat down with a glass of wine on the sofa and listened to Elliot. She replied that breakfast was at 7 in the morning and assumed that the man was a butler and assistant. The man thought that the girl had been listening all this time, and for some reason he found fault with her. Elliot said the girl may have been out of work for almost a month. He explained that the former employee responsible for the job for which Lady Dorene was hired would return after he had sorted out the management in Romina, since the Duke had left that place. The girl suggested that it would be nice for her to see her workplace, because she should study the department and understand how things are going. Elliot was a little surprised because he had previously thought that Lady Dorene would be resting and not getting ready for work. The Duke warned the girl that Elliot did everything as it should. The assistant carried out the instructions perfectly and without errors. The girl thought that Elliot really was something. In one of the branches of the Alashir Investment Bank, the temporary manager of the Securities Trading Department, Clark Wesley, indignantly told those present that Duke Damon had probably gone crazy. The man was alarmed and said that the Duke had bankrupted Marsala and turned his back on the royal family. And now he also wanted to give the bank to a 20-year-old girl. Clark was furious that the Duke had decided to give the fund to an unknown girl. He thought Damon put him in charge of the department because it was preparation for running a bank. The man said that the Duke was besotted by the girl's appearance and made a mistake. Clark believed that the new manager could not know anything about management. At that moment, someone put their hand on the man's shoulder and said that Clark should not worry about this. The man was a little excited and turned around to look. Clark Wesley didn't expect the Duke to be standing behind him. Damon smiled and said that he felt guilty that the man was so angry. The Duke sat at the head of the table and invited the bank employees to talk if they had already finished scolding him. One of the men politely turned to Duke Damon and explained that they did not understand what was happening because the girl was only 20 years old. Damon smiled back and said that he started the bank when he was only 18. The bank employees were very worried but did not argue. The Duke reassured the workers that the new manager would take office only after his resignation, and, fortunately, the man was only 26 years old, and he expected to last another 40 years. The employees began to whisper among themselves and realized that the girl would be 60 by that time, and everything that Sir Damon did was calculated in advance. Clark Wesley told those present that everything was not so simple, because the Duke convinced the girl to work in the bank and promised to leave her his fund. Damon explained that the girl would receive payment corresponding to her contribution, and, in addition, the Duke himself could manage his fund. The Duke jokingly suggests what the fund's value will be in 40 years. Clark offers to give the fund to him if it is not so valuable. The man asked the Duke to explain why the girl was better than them and whether she was so unique. Damon explained to the staff that Dorene Bradshaw will be working on a new model of the system. The men were amazed to hear this. One of the employees suggested that the Duke believed this plan could already be monetized. The Duke confirmed his guesses and said that the preparations were completed. Damon was determined to act and announced to employees that Westwood would be over within the next 3 years. After the meeting, Clark Wesley took out the magic stone and began complaining to someone about how he felt insulted after everything he had done for this company. The man said that he had worked with the Duke for many years and thought that Damon would notice his efforts. His interlocutor answered him that the girl was ruining everything, and the Duke was a bad man who fell for her attractiveness. Clark confirmed his words. The man was angry and believed that a 20-year-old girl could not know much, especially about the system. There was a huge operating system that could answer all human questions, which was still not activated due to unknown circumstances. Clark Wesley believed that he would not leave the girl alone and said that he would prove that the Duke had made a mistake. The next morning, Dorene had breakfast with the Duke. The man said that Elliot told him that the girl intended to go to the bank with him. Damon explained that, unfortunately, the assistant was too busy with his duties, and so the man himself would help Lady Dorene. The Duke noticed that the girl was late for breakfast today and wanted to know the reason for this. The girl replied that nothing important had happened. In fact, the new maid made a lot of mistakes in the morning when she helped the girl get herself in order, but Dorene believed that it was not worth talking about it and causing unnecessary fuss. The girl missed her maid Anna, who was sensitive and talented. Before leaving, Dorene gave her a business card and now waited for the maid to write to her. The Duke began to read the newspaper and read in it that the stock price had fallen and told the girl about it. Dorene became curious and asked to tell her what promotions we were talking about.